From the streets of Birmingham, a voice rose, speaking for the broken, the ones nobody chose. Heavy metal thunder for the kids cast aside, showing them their darkness was something to take pride in. But in those same streets, two boys walked alone, Patrick and David, far from home. Society saw trouble where there should have been care. Two young hearts beating, dreams hanging in the air. We are the dreamers of better days. When outcasts find their voice, when the labeled and forgotten realize they always had a choice. From Birmingham's heart, the message rings. Every soul deserves to be seen. We are the dreamers. We are the dreamers of what could have been. One found stages, crowds that understood, turned his pain into power, his rage into something good. But two found shadows where the light should have been.
Live. We're now live. Okay, Sarah, therapist you know, Matt, Irish Amy, Fala, William. Thank you for showing up, you guys. I appreciate it. Today, we're going to talk about Birmingham's Lost Sons, the Carton Kids, and Ozzy Osbourne, a memorial to him, because a dedication. We're dedicating this to him. So thank you for coming, and let's go ahead and get the party started. First of all, remember, I love you all, so here we go. Sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen on here. Greetings to my truth seekers and my justice warriors. I'm Z, your storyteller in the wilderness of injustice, with my ride or die doc, riding shotgun as we navigate the darkness where the predators hunt and the system fails. We're ready to shine a light on the forgotten stories society prefers to bury. But before we dive in today, we're going to take a moment and honor someone that left us too soon. So, whoops, wrong button. I pushed the wrong button.
You're a button pusher.
Yes, I am, Doc. You know, I can't help myself. But on July 22nd, 2025, we lost a legend, not just of music, but of the human spirit. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness himself, passed away at 76, just weeks after his final performance with Black Sabbath in his beloved Birmingham. Our Trial Junkies United community has been heartbroken by this loss. Many of you have reached out. We're sharing our favorite memories and songs, from Crazy Train to Mama, I'm Coming Home, No More Tears. You know, Ozzy's music was kind of a soundtrack to our lives, the anthem of misfits, the outcasts, and those who refuse to be silenced. That's what we love. But here's what many people don't know about Ozzy, is that beneath that wild exterior, that crazy Prince of Darkness was someone who truly cared about children and the vulnerable. Hey, Rev, thanks for joining us. He understood what it meant to be written off by society, to be dismissed as just another problem kid from the wrong side of the tracks, as they say. And that's why today's tribute is meaningful because we're going to honor Ozzy by sharing the story of two young boys from his own city of Birmingham, Patrick Warren, who was 11, and David Spencer, who was only 13, who disappeared from Chelmsley Wood, Birmingham on Boxing Day, 1996. These boys were young and, like Ozzy, a little bit wild, a little bit naughty, cheeky, and sadly, that perception may have cost them their lives. Because when the system writes you off as a troublemaker, who fights for justice when you disappear? Patrick and David were Birmingham boys through and through, working class kids who should have had their whole lives ahead of them. Instead, they became known as the Milk Carton Kids, and their face was printed on containers across the UK as their families desperately searched for answers that never came. Now, they were the first kids that they did this for in the UK. Almost 30 years later, their case remains unsolved. Their families continue to wait for closure, and we believe that's exactly the kind of injustice Ozzy would want us to stand up against. So buckle up, trial junkies and justice warriors. The road ahead gets tougher as we guide you through another part of this nightmare called the justice system. But today, we ride for Patrick and David, we ride for every forgotten child, and we ride in memory of Ozzy, a man who understood that behind every troublemaker is a human being who deserves justice, dignity, and love. This one's for you, Ozzy. Thank you for showing us that even in the darkness, we can find our voice. We can stand up for those who can't fight for themselves. So I'm going to take you guys back to December 26, 1996. Over in the UK, they call it Boxing Day, and that's what it was in Birmingham. While families across the UK are settling in after Christmas celebrations, two young boys are about to become part of a huge mystery that's unsolved 30 years later. 11-year-old Patrick Ryan, called Paddy by his family, was one of 7 children from a working class Irish family in Chelmsley Wood. He was cheeky, lively, and completely thrilled with his Christmas present. He got a bright red Apollo laser bicycle. Doesn't he look cheeky? What a cutie. Now, his best friend is 13-year-old David Spencer. Now, David lived nearby, and David was an enthusiastic boxer. He was street smart and admittedly had gotten into some trouble. He'd been excluded from mainstream schools and had been in and out of youth court. Kind of sounds like Ozzy. However, he was also described by his family as a caring and really a protective older brother. These boys were Birmingham lads through and through, somewhat rough around the edges, perhaps, but with hearts of gold. Sounds familiar. They were kids who didn't fit the mold of the perfect victim that the media and the police usually rally around. So that Boxing Day evening, they'd already had a little run in with one of the police officers who saw them playing near a frozen pond. And he told them, don't do that. You could get hurt. And they'd taken off, and it was late. And the boys had been together all day playing. And Patty had that new bike, and they were riding around. But, they just didn't want to separate yet. You know how it is when you're having a good time? You just want to stay with your buddy. So what happened was after they'd been out. It was around midnight. They were still out and about, and they told their families that they were going to spend the night at Patty's older brother's house. Now, this is just a short walk away, around the corner, but they didn't arrive. So what happens? Well, instead, at 12:45 a.m. on December 27th, they stopped at the gas station where the attendant, Ellen Morgan, knew them personally. Now, the gas station pumps were closed, but they had a hatch, and she would sell stuff to people that would, kind of like, just a little shop in the gas station. So they showed up, and they told her they were hungry. She goes, "Well, I'll give you some crisps. I'll pay for them." And so she put them through the hatch. Now, the interesting thing about this is there are external microphones for the nighttime transactions. So she can hear quite a ways away. Okay, that's very important. She watches them go across the street. Now, Patty doesn't have his bike at this time, but the two of them went across the street and they sat on some steps and they're sharing their snack. A little bit later, she looked up and they were gone. But at first she didn't think anything of it. Okay, they moved on. There were no screams, no sounds of struggle. There was nothing. She looked up and the boys had moved on. And that detail is very crucial, you guys. Ellen Morgan would later say that if anything had happened, she would have heard it through those microphones. So the boys just disappeared into the night. The next day, Patty's brand new bicycle was discovered abandoned behind the gas station near the trash bins. And this is a critical failure of the police. It took the police several weeks to even realize the bike belonged to the missing Patty. Several weeks. They didn't put it together. For a bike to be found at the exact location where those boys were last seen, and they didn't have a clue. And that gives you a feeling of how this is going to go with the police department. From the start, West Midlands police treated this as a runaway case. They called the boys streetwise, a term that would haunt this investigation, you guys. Senior officers told the media there's no reason to believe the boys had come to any harm. They offered a $500 reward for anyone who might be harboring the boys, as if it was just kind of a game. They'll come home when one of them said when they were hungry. Yeah, that's what they said. They were 11 and 13 years old. They were children. They weren't streetwise boys or men that could survive on their own. They were children. Now, Professor David Wilson is a criminologist, and he studied this case thoroughly. One reason is because the year after they disappeared, he actually went to Birmingham and started teaching there. And he said, if it had been two boys from middle class, and now I already forgot, Sohol? Yeah, Sohol, I think, who went missing. And I'm sorry to anyone in the UK if I'm pronouncing that wrong. That case would have been handled very differently at first. This was about a class judgment that was made, which was ready to see them as runaways rather than vulnerable children. Their mothers even put out a plea and on TV and said, if you guys have left, please call us, come home, because they were kind of put in that position. But David's mother never, ever believed that was even a possibility. So the boys weren't seen as missing children. They were considered troublemakers who would come home when they're hungry. Now, does this sound familiar in terms of a young Ozzy was probably viewed in his day? Meanwhile, just days after the boys disappeared, 17-year-old Nicola Dixon was found murdered nearby in Sutton Cornfield. Her case featured a middle-class girl. It took the headlines, you guys. It took all the police resources. Nicola certainly deserved the attention. Patty and David's family did not feel bad that she was getting that attention, but it was a stark contrast in how the cases were handled. That's impossible to overlook because she was all over the media, the national media. Patty and David never got out of the local media. The national media didn't pick up those boys, and they were missing children. By April of 1997, the boys made history in the UK with their faces appearing on those milk cartons, the first missing children to be featured that way in Britain. The campaign began actually in the US in 1979 when the face of 6-year-old Eaton Paz was featured on cartons. The idea was simple. Since most families buy milk weekly, put missing children's faces directly into every home. But the UK campaign was different because it was run by Iceland, a smaller supermarket chain on their 4 pint cartons across 770 stores. So it did bring some attention, but it earned the boys, the nickname the Milk Carton Kids. And it didn't have the nationwide reach that was needed at this time. But unlike in America, where the campaign had proven successful, this effort yielded no significant leads. The boys were only featured for 4 weeks, but by then the crucial time had already been lost. They weren't considered a serious missing persons case until February of 1997, 3 months after they disappeared. The DCI got involved. Now, we're going to jump ahead a little bit and talk about one of the main suspects. In 1999, Brian Field was arrested for drunk driving in Chelmsley Wood. Now, this is the very area that the boys lived in, okay? And it is a routine. Okay, we're talking about cancer. Oh, I'll have to catch up on that later, guys. Shout out to Iceland. Are their veggie burgers good? Cool. I like a good veggie burger. Doc makes awesome ones. So, anyway, in 1999, Brian Field, he's arrested for drunken driving. Now, this is the area where these boys lived, and a routine DNA sample now links him to the 1968 SA and murder of a 14-year-old boy named Roy Tuthill in Surrey, a case that had been unsolved for over 30 years. No, fella, you can talk about what you want, sweetie. You know that. I don't get that picky. Hey, Lazy River, thanks for joining us. This is your chance to communicate. I get it. I just, trying to talk and read the thing at the same time gets confusing for me. So, Field's background was disturbing. He had a criminal record that went back decades, you guys. In 1969, he was fined for gross indecency and an assault and attempted kidnapping of a 14-year-old boy in Aberdeen during the 70s. And he had 2 4-year prison sentences in the 80s for unlawful sex with underage boys and false imprisonment. Are you seeing the pattern here? Most notably, in 1986, he attempted to abduct 2 teenage boys at the same time. Sounds familiar? They were 13 and 16. He offered them a ride and then threatened them with a wheel brace and ordered them to remove their clothing. The boys escaped by jumping out of the moving car. But here's what's crucial. Fields is the only person in British criminal history ever convicted of trying to abduct 2 teenage boys at the same time. And 2 boys had just gone missing together from this exact neighborhood. Now, you don't have to be a brain scientist to figure that one out, do you, Doc?
Not at all.
I mean, hello. This is the man's pattern. And that's what he said when he got drunk. He got bad urges. Yeah. He's a geezer is what he is.
Yeah, well then don't get drunk.
Yeah. Here. But the Field worked as a self-employed gardener in Solihull, living just miles from where Patrick and David had disappeared. He was a regular at the old colonial pub on Damson Lane, visiting 2 to 3 times a week for quizzes and chess, appearing to locals as harmless as butter would melt in his mouth. And one neighbor later described him. He knew the area well. He had access to tools for digging and was reportedly driving around in a white van on the night the boys vanished while drunk. So sadly, the white van that, every parent talks to their kids about, watch out for the white van. Well, this time, Doc, it was a white van. Now, most chillingly, reports indicate that the geezer had been seen talking to these boys days before their disappearance, hinting at possible grooming. Now, the interesting thing is, before they did a special in 2021, a documentary, and it was Professor David Wilson who did it, they didn't have some of this information. The police didn't. Yeah, they did not have this information. It's terrible. So, this might explain why Ellen Morgan, who was working at the gas station and knew the boys, if the boys trusted the geezer, that's why they wouldn't have struggled or screamed. He could have just said, "Hey guys, want to go such and such, or I'll get you this," and they would have just gone along. They're boys, they were up for an adventure. Now, the impact on the families has been profound. Patrick's mother, now this is the young boy that the geezer did end up deleting. And he was just 14 years old, but it was back in the 60s. And that's just sad.
Yeah.
The impact on the families has been profound. Patrick's mother, Bridget Warren, suffered from severe depression and passed away from cancer in 2001, just 5 years after her son disappeared without ever knowing what happened to him. Like you said, Sarah, cancer's the worst. And here's the two moms at one of the interviews they had done, pleading to the public. Now, without ever know, Christine Harvey, now she still lives in the same house. That would be David's mom, holding on hope that she's going to get answers. And as one of the police said, or investigators, he said that they see that a lot where some parents just never can leave after a child has disappeared from a home because they just keep hoping somehow they'll walk through the door. David's younger brother, Lee O'Toole, has become the voice for both families. And this is Lee and his mom. In 2021, frustrated by the lack of progress, he actually organized community searches of the area where Fields was seen digging around the time of his disappearance because people came forward. Just like our community here, when we try and rally together over important things, like our Native and Indigenous issues, this community, they rallied behind Lee trying to find his brother and his friend Patrick, raising over $15,000 through a GoFundMe and donating excavation equipment. People showed up. They brought food to feed people. And we've asked the police to attend. We've asked them to do it properly, but they're not interested, Lee said. So he did it himself. Now, the renewed investigation was prompted by a key witness, Mark Ames, who used to drink with the geezer at the local pubs. And after a 2021 documentary, which was done by Professor David Wilson, Ames stepped forward, claiming he saw Field digging and filling holes at land beside the Soul Hole Moors football ground in the days after the boys disappeared. This is a picture of David with his two younger brothers. Notably, Ames said he had reported this to the police twice over the years, but they didn't seem to take any notice. Isn't that great? You report some man that is known for this kind of thing is going around digging holes and nobody bothers to check it out. Wow.
Isn't it wonderful to know that this is just not an issue in the United States, that the police departments they're bad all over. Just
there are those that just do not want to do their job.
Yep.
And so Lee was only 9 when David disappeared. He said, "Dave was my backbone. I haven't been the same since. I think of him constantly every day. There's not a day that goes by I haven't thought of him." A pattern of overlooked cases, because this case illustrates what the criminologists call the missing white woman syndrome where cases involving a young, middle-class, traditionally innocent victim gets disproportionate attention while others are ignored. Ellen Morgan, remember our gas station attendant, was never properly interviewed. In 2021, they located her and she came out to the scene. In the documentary, Amelia Fox, for those that watch UK TV, you may know her. She's played on TV series before. Silent Witness is one of her biggest ones. And she was on this documentary with Professor Wilson. And she talked to Ellen. And after all these years, as Ellen was showing her where things were, because the gas station's gone, but she took Amelia to these places and was pointing them out. And she had to wipe tears away because she remembers those little boys and it breaks her heart. And she said that this other picture is right across the street from where the gas station was. And she said there used to be stairs over there. And she said that's where the boys were sitting. She says, because I could sit there and watch them. But of course, you turn away and all of a sudden they're gone. And you think, oh, well, they've just gone along on the whatever path they were going to take. She didn't think anything bad had happened. She said nobody, to her knowledge, ever even looked at the gas station's CCTV footage at the time. Didn't even bother. Because to them, these boys were just runaways. Patrick's new bike wasn't found, until the next day. And it was weeks later before the police even put it together. Hey, Krusty, thanks for joining us. So here were big things that could have been done. Checking the CCTV, putting the bike with Patrick. It wouldn't have been hard. It was right after Christmas. You find a brand new red bike. You couldn't figure out that, hey, maybe one of the boys had a red bike. And these weren't bad kids. They were children who deserved the same protection and urgency as any other missing child. Now, Geezer died in prison in 2024 at the age of 87, taking his secrets with him. Now, they had said that in 2021, Professor Wilson did talk to an officer who made the comment that they had been requested to go interview the geezer. But he says, I'll tell you right now, I can't really discuss it because, it's an ongoing investigation. After that many years, it's an ongoing investigation. You guys screwed up the investigation. You got to be asking for any kind of help you can get. I mean, he was in prison, put a little pressure on the dude. But no, now he's died, so they don't get the answers. But the search for Patrick and David continues because Lee's not giving up. Recent developments have demonstrated the community's determination. In 2022, an HS2 construction worker near the NEC spent a day carefreely inspecting a site of interest identified by Lee's team. When they found nothing, the crowd spontaneously cheered for them, with someone shouting, "Thank you, lads. You've done more than West Midlands police ever have." That's sad that you're thanking these people that are out there actually looking for your brother when these other people that it's their job didn't bother.
Well, how many of those people that were part of the police department back in 96 are possibly retired and,
Yeah.
by now they're not even on the force anymore.
Well, and some have passed away because there was a really good police officer who was just a junior officer. And he actually, with another family that's kind of associated with this case, we'll get to a little bit, he actually went out of his way to help that family because he did not believe the story that was being told about their little boy. So, but let's jump back here. Professor David Wilson, the criminologist who covered this case in the 2021 documentary, it's called In the Footsteps of Killers. I think it's on its 4th season, received over 200 messages after the episode aired. One contained what he believed was vital information about the geezer digging ditches. information that had apparently been given to the police, but was ignored. Now, the case is with the homicide team, officially classified as a murder investigation now. And as recently as 2023, West Midlands Police stated a current review is still in progress. We continue to ask anyone with information regarding the boy's disappearance and who has yet to contact us to please do so. Really? After all this time, you guys are going to try and act like you're on top of things? So sad. Now, David did talk about doing some geolocating. So they have identified some areas to search. So hopefully one of these days, because there was a place that they had found bones and the families were hoping they had found their boys, but it turned out it was something else, or another victim of someone else. So, we don't know when things might turn out. But David would be 42 years old today. Patrick would be 40. And their families deserve answers. These boys deserve justice. And not because of where they came from or how they behaved, because they were children who vanished into the night and never came home. The fight for truth in cold cases often comes down to keeping their stories alive in public memory. Cases like Patrick and David's depend on people to continue talking about them, share the stories, refuse to let it fade into obscurity. Advances in forensic technology that can re-examine old evidence, DNA testing, digital forensics, other scientific breakthroughs can breathe new life into decades-old investigations. I wonder if they even went over the bicycle. We don't know. New witnesses who might finally feel safe to come forward. Time changes circumstances, and people who once stayed silent may find the courage or the safety to finally speak up. Investigators who refuse to let files gather dust, it takes dedicated detectives and cold case teams who see these children as more than just old paperwork. There are families and advocates who won't let the world forget, like Leo Toole and the community that rallied around him, persistent voices demanding answers and keeping pressure on the authorities. You're the best advocate of any of your family if something happens to them. You have to speak up. You can't just think, oh, well, they're the police, they'll take care of it. No, they're not important to the police. They're important to you. You love them, you care for them. These elements working together have solved cases that seemed hopeless. Without them, Patrick and David risk becoming just another statistic, another pair of faces on an old milk carton that society's chosen to forget. But our mission, the trial junkies, the truth seekers, our justice warriors, this is exactly why we do what we do. This is our missing. These young boys shouldn't have been judged and dismissed. They shouldn't have been denied the attention this case deserved. If they had been taken seriously from day one, if their disappearance had been treated with urgency that it warranted, this case might have already been solved. However, society deemed these Birmingham boys less than important than other people. Society looked at their backgrounds and their behavior, their families, and made a judgment that cost precious time and maybe even those boys' lives. But we refuse to accept that. We refuse to let the stories be forgotten. Let's raise our voices to speak up for those who society tries to dismiss as unimportant. Every missing child matters. Hey, good night, Matt. Have a safe journey. Every victim deserves our justice. Every family deserves answers. Patrick Warren and David Spencer were more than just numbers, okay? They're not merely streetwise troublemakers. They were children, sons, brothers, friends, and they deserved so much more than what they received. We're going to go into next our missing people, and we have a I think just 3, because one of them that I was going to put up tonight got found. I like when that happens. The first young lady, her name is Ashley Zila Signara. Ashley, I butchered your name. I apologize. She's been missing since June 30th from Hyattsville, Maryland. She's 17 years old, female, Native American, brown eyes, 5'5", 80 pounds. She was last seen wearing a black hoodie and gray pants, seen at approximately 10 a.m. at the 3600 block of Hamilton Street in Hyattsville. If you have any information about Ashley, call Hyattsville Police Department at 301-985-5060 or call your local 911 because we don't know if people have traveled to other states. Next, we have Sierra Lindbergh. She's 30 years old. She's from the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana, and we know Montana is notorious for our missing Native women. She's been missing since July 24th. She's 5'7", 130 pounds, dark brown hair, and brown eyes. They can't remember what she was wearing. We don't have a description. She was last seen in South Glacier Home area at July 24th. She's not been had any contact with family, friends, current whereabouts, they don't know. On her right hand, she has a rose tattoo. If you know her whereabouts, please call the dispatch center at 406-338-4000. 406-338-4000. She was last seen, our next young man, is Leland Sexton. He's Cherokee, North Carolina, and he's been missing since July 24th from the Jenkins Grocery. He's only 15. He's 5'4", 130 pounds, hazel eyes, brown hair. He's American Indian, light complected, last seen wearing a black hoodie and possibly cargo pants. He's traveling in the direction of Cherokee, and he's possibly in the Robbinsville area. If you've got information, contact the Cherokee Indian Police Department. Call 828-497-4131 or 911. Alternately, you can also submit a tip anonymously through the Cherokee Indian Police Department at 828-497-4131. Okay. So cases may go cold, but the fight for truth and justice must go on. Every killer relies on your silence. Don't be why we share another story on this channel. If you know something, speak up, because that wasn't a mannequin. It never is. Now we're going to talk about our final tribute. I'll share a short story. We had a cat that I named Ozzy Osbourne. He was a long-haired black cat, the most gorgeous cat I'd ever owned. And the reason he got the name Ozzy was because when we adopted him and brought him home, we actually adopted 2 cats. And the big white one was still feral, so it hid under a bed. And for 3 weeks, that white cat, who we named Houdini because he disappeared, stayed under the bed. And Ozzy would walk around the house screaming like our Ozzy Osbourne for Sharon. And that's, as he yelled, I swear, I thought he was screaming for Sharon. So that's how he got his name. So that's one of my Ozzy stories. The minute I saw that cat, I knew he was a wild man. But we want to leave you with this thought about the man we honor tonight. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just the Prince of Darkness. He was a beacon of light for everyone who felt like they didn't belong. Through 5 decades of music, he taught us that being different isn't something to hide from. It's something to embrace. From his early days with Black Sabbath to his solo career that defied every expectation, Ozzy showed us that authenticity trumps perfection every time. His art gave voice to the voiceless, strength to the outcasts, and hopes to those society had written off. He proved that someone dismissed just another problem kid from Birmingham could shake the world and touch the hearts of millions in a way that's exactly what Patrick and David deserved. Someone to see their worth beyond society's quick judgments. Who knows what potential those little boys would have brought to the world? We'll never know. But we thank you, Ozzy, for the thunderous riffs that became our battle cries, for the vulnerable ballads that held us when we were broken, for showing us that even in the darkest moments, we can find the courage to bark at the moon and demand to be heard. Your legacy isn't just in your music, it's in every person who found the strength to be viewed as themselves because you showed us how. Rest in power, or, because we love you, the Prince of Darkness. Your voice will resonate through eternity. And share your stories of what Ozzy meant to you guys. I created a song. Doc will be playing it. So until next time, trial junkies, stay informed and compassionate and continue to seek justice. Keep fighting for the forgotten, just as Ozzy would have wanted. And as we go out tonight, Doc will play the song for us. I love you all. Thank you for coming. And until Thursday, we'll chat with you then.
Out of Birmingham, they called him crazy, a broken voice, a rebel boy. But the noise he made, it sparked the flame for every soul who's felt the same. He wore darkness like battle gear, but inside burned a light so clear. Said you don't need to play their game, you're perfect when they curse your name. Oh, Prince of Darkness, shine so brightly. You gave us songs to fight through the night. Taught us truth in every scream. Turned misfits into kings and queens. Yeah, you howled for all the castaways. Showed us how to turn pain into praise. Rest in power, your fire lives on. Through every heart that dares to belong. From cyber smoke